Welcome to the Toronto Real Estate Podcast. Today, we are going to do a deep dive into 2024, the year that was, the good, the bad, the ugly, the ups, the downs, the all-arounds. And today, I have as my co-host the fabulous Reuben Marin, who's a co-founder and broker at Fox Marin. And I am Ralph Fox, the co-founder and broker of record of Fox Marin as well. So thank you so much for joining. And today we have a very, very special podcast for you where we are going to talk to the senior buyer agents at Fox Marin to get their perspective, unadulterated, pure and real, boots on the ground. So we are going to get into 2024, the year that was. This is going to be a humdinger. Check it. Today we have none other than Jessica Spillas, the queen of acquisitions, not just at Fox Marin, not just in the GTA, but I'm going to be so bold as to say all of North America. So we are very blessed to have Jessica join us here today on the Toronto Real Estate Podcast. And Jess is here to talk about one thing, 2024, the year that was. And it's almost nice to refer to it in the past tense because it has been a year. Let me tell you.
In a year.
Okay, so my first question, my lead off is Jess, Queen of Acquisitions. If you were to describe 2024 in one word, what would it be?
Unpredictable, for sure. And I'm probably not the only person that would come up with that word. Feels like all my conversations with other colleagues and agents have been through the same lens. And yeah, I mean, there was no assurances on anything this year. Some seemingly great properties that we expected to perform really well struggled. And some challenged properties that we expected to sit on the market elicited multiple offers within a couple of days. So all bets were off this year and there was no assurances on anything. It was all very unpredictable.
So freaking unpredictable.
It almost became predictably unpredictable.
That's exactly what happened. What do you think is going to happen this year? I don't know. What's going to happen with my listing? I don't know. What's going to happen with the buy side? What's going to happen with interest rates? What's going to happen with the economy? I don't know. So with that being said, what do you think your biggest learning or takeaway has been from 2024?
I think my biggest learning was to expect the unexpected. And the best way to respond to changes that you don't anticipate is to do a lot of heavy lifting and due diligence and research and preparation from the onset. And I think when you invest that time in the beginning, you're in such a better position to move forward without hesitation and do so with far more confidence. And that was incredibly valuable both to our clients this year and even in previous years when the markets were a little bit more competitive. So if you fail to prepare, you prepare to fail.
I'm all about being prepared. Could not agree more. Ralph knows. He's like, oh my God, are you talking us for this presentation?
I kind of like to wing it, but
it looks like I'm going in to do like a criminal law defense when we go meet a client because I've got like a rolling one of those like rollers with like a file box with me just in case they ask a question. I'm like, hold on, the affidavit for agency out. All that paper for. I'm like, well, they even ask me this question. I want to be able to answer it, and I have to have it printed so that it's there. So I have it hard copy. So I'm with you on that 1,000,000%. But you and I, we are cut from the same cloth. Ralph operates in a different business system.
So Jess, given that we are in a very unpredictable environment, which soon became predictably unpredictable or uncertain at best, what, looking back at the year, really, really surprised you? Like what happened? And that could be sort of obviously in the context of real estate, but bigger picture or smaller picture. Like if you were to put your finger on one thing, what would it be?
I mean, I think the obvious answer is the general resiliency of the market, given everything that we have been hit with. If you look at the numbers back in 2021, the resale stats almost mirror those figures identically. And I found that really interesting because for doing this for almost 10 years now, most of the period of time that I've been helping buyers, it's been impossible to outsave the market. And so it's almost like somebody just went and hit the pause button, and it's given buyers a real runway to catch up and enter into the market without such a rapid outpacing of average prices. And so I found that particularly interesting in combination with the fact that buyer sentiment was almost at an all-time low. Buyers really had their backs up against the wall this year. Trust was very much eroded between buyers and sellers. And so even though they had opportunity to enter under far better terms than we're used to seeing, there was still a lot of trepidation. And so as a result, we weren't seeing as many transactions, and the ones that we were able to get across the finish line took a lot more effort and hard conversations than we're used to seeing.
I think almost you could say each successful transaction took a slight part of our souls, because there was just so much involved, such little margin of error, almost a disconnect between the universe that buyers were living in versus sellers living in, and trying to bridge that happy medium and facilitate that. Probably this has been one of, if not the most challenging year for that. And then I've realized my word is actually two words, and it's the year of hard conversations.
So with that being said, I'd love to know from both of you, has anything that stemmed out of that storyline changed the way that you're going to approach the business moving into 2025? Jess, I'll start with you, and then Ralph, I'd like to hear your follow-up to that as well. That you'll forever be changed by, that you've now will change your approach because of?
I think on the topic of tough conversations, I think preparing our clients for that in advance and having those conversations with them in advance, as opposed to having the conversation when we're already in the midst of chaos or disconnection between all of the parties involved. And I think that if you can get ahead of those challenges and put that expectation in both a buyer and seller's mind from the forefront, then things can iron out much easier when they actually cross that bridge.
Ralph, do you want to add to that? Anything that you'll change moving forward in 2025 due to the experiences that we had this year, including that gap between buyer-seller expectations?
Yeah, I think for me, like on the short term, tremendous uncertainty, but I think on the long term, I have a lot of certainty and very deep conviction about where things are going in 3, 4, 5 years from now. And so when I make my business decisions with the brokerage, with the team, when we advise our clients, it's really easy to skip over the long term, but the long term is really what should be deciding the short term decisions. And so, from a business perspective, I see this as a wonderful time of opportunity to grow the business, to grow the brand, to grow the brokerage, while everyone else is shrinking in uncertainty. That is the opportune time to expand. And I think that also passes down to our clients, and having them really see the periods of uncertainty as the periods of opportunity. But going back and leaning on what Jess just said, it's really important that somebody has all the information and feels really comfortable with the advice that they're getting and the information that they have at hand, so that they themselves feel empowered to make the best possible decision, while reminding them why they're doing it, to set themselves up in their future selves 3, 4, 5 years down the road. And so I see the parallel from ourselves, our business, our brokerage, our team, with our clients, and reminding them of that big picture and taking the fear out of the uncertainty in the moment. And I've been doing a lot of self-talking in 2024, reminding myself of that. But this government won't be in power forever, and things will turn around, and this country, this city will come back to its potential. I have no doubt of that. And if you look at the supply pipeline for supply in 3, 4, 5 years down the road, it's pretty clear where prices are going to go. So this is a great time of opportunity, and it's a time to move forward, not pause in fear or take a step back.
To be a real estate philosopher, Ralph.
Sure.
Broker of record and real estate philosopher. I love it.
What would you say your biggest client win or success was this year that really just encapsulated why you do what you do and how you are as the queen of acquisitions of North America?
There's a few, but I'll keep it short. There's one instance that stands out in my mind where me and my buyer clients were about an hour away from an offer submission. And I was coaching them through expectations, walking them through the paperwork for the fourth or fifth time just to make sure that they understood everything. And I sensed a very strong level of trepidation on their end. And something just didn't feel right about it. And so what I did is I asked them to take a beat and ask themselves, is this really the best decision and the right property for them? Or are they just rushing into something because they're afraid that nothing better is going to come online? And I said to them, as your consultant first, I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm here to stop you from purchasing the wrong thing. And if you choose not to move forward with this, I'm in full support. And so they took the time to have an offline conversation. They called me back and they were like, you know what, you're right. We are rushing into this. And I said, yeah, let's just scrap this offer and take it one day at a time. And then 2 weeks later, we found another property that was eons better than the one that we were almost going to offer on. And they got it for an amazing price. And to this day, because that was a few months ago, they look back and they go, thank goodness we didn't move forward with that first offer, because it just wasn't the right thing for us. And I think if you're an agent and you have a sales mentality, you might not care whether or not it's the right thing for your client. It's just a transaction is a transaction. But if you have a deep yearning to connect with your clients and protect them on a deeper level, it creates a level of trust and rapport that is so invaluable and is what's going to be the difference between having a sustainable long-term career in this business and not. So that for me was probably one of the best things to see. And the fact that we could each collaborate and have those open, honest, candid conversations was not only valuable to them, but it meant so much to me as well that we could collaborate on that level.
That's amazing. They're lucky to have you, Jess.
Thank you. I felt very lucky to have them as well. They were wonderful clients.
Amazing. And if you could say one word to 2024, a parting, as you will, what would that be?
Sayonara. See you never.
Sayonara, sucker.
Yes. Yeah. No, I'm actually looking forward to more stability, a little bit more positivity in the market next year. And I think once we have that, there'll be less of an entitlement from both ends of the transaction, and people will be able to speak the same language again, hopefully. So can't wait. All right, guys. Have a good one. Bye.
Next up, we have the mighty, the suave, the sophisticated Reuben Labovitz, broker at Fox Marin. Reuben, so great to have you here. Always looking forward to your insights on the market and on your experiences so far this year. So great to have you here.
Happy to be here, yes.
Okay, so Reuben, in one word, how would you describe 2024?
Divided.
Nice. I like that. Okay. What do you mean by that?
Well, I thought it's only one word, no explanation needed.
Well, there is an explanation because it's such a great word.
It is a good word.
Very intriguing.
I think you can look at this from a lot of different perspectives in relation to the market and Toronto in general. But the reason I picked the word divided is because I don't think there is such thing as a overall Toronto real estate market anymore. I think in 2024 specifically, there's a Toronto real estate condo market and there's a Toronto real estate house market. And they are two very different things. And obviously they are intertwined, but they behave quite differently.
Interesting. And I also find with the word divided, just thinking about it more, because I was thinking about in the context, just how divided buyers and sellers have been, like almost in complete different realities. And we're like the intermediaries between two spirit worlds. So that was one thing that came to mind when you said divided, which I thought was a great word. And the other is it almost felt like there were two markets this year, like the first half and the second half. I think the first, almost three. I'd say from January to June, June to September, and then September on. Like not the three segments divided, I would see the market. So it is interesting. There's so many different ways that I think the word divided is applicable. And you being the last one for us to interview, I think it's the best word. I think that was the best answer, personally, in my experience.
So question, Rubes. You've just worked through a divided marketplace. What have been your big takeaways or learning out of 2024?
I think the biggest one is actually more of a generalization than kind of picking one. And it's that no two interactions, no two transactions are the same. Everybody is so torn. Everybody has different opinions. And so for me, I think my biggest takeaway from this past year was being able to draw from every single experience and have a learning from every experience and then apply it to the next one. And I think if we're not constantly doing that, then we're not improving ourselves. And ultimately, I don't think we're doing the best that we can for our clients.
I totally agree. And also just having to adapt with so many different personality types. And I think there is a perception that when people are buying and selling real estate, that it's really fun. However, it's a very high stakes game. And I would say oftentimes we're working with clients at their most stressful state. And in that, people react to the environment in different ways, whether that's flight, fight, freeze. And with all those dualities, there's also partnerships that are like dealing with each other and the way they react to real estate. And so oftentimes when people are like, oh, it's so fun, we're also probably dealing with people not at their best. And so I agree, like you have to be like adapting to each situation because everyone's so different. And then every scenario seems to unfold in a different way. As much as we try to get ahead of everything and forecast as much as possible and predict next steps and be strategic, you're still having to be so responsive in real time with everyone's like very volatile emotions, which can be from like crying to screaming to like full ghosting.
I hadn't even thought about this previously, but I had clients divorce in the middle of their search this year.
Oh,
Like literally in the middle. And just this conversation just reminded me of that. And speak about divided and needing to change gears very, very, very last minute for quick decisions. That's just one severe example of people's emotional state.
yeah.
But I really want to interject here and just say that while that happens in real estate, residential real estate specifically, I think this has been heightened to like all-time highs, given all of the financial stress and uncertainty that we're facing. And so to my lens, I've never seen so many lawyers involved in the middle, not at the end, which is usually when lawyers come in, but in the middle, from bankruptcies, estate litigation, divorces, like to the extreme where husband and wife aren't even talking to each other and lawyers have to be CC'd on a separate email chain. It's been to such an extent, everything, as what Corey was saying, has been so heightened that the divisions are just becoming so wide that you're right, Reuben. Every transaction really, really, really is different from one another, and everyone almost has its own learning, very different from a more stable environment where it's just more standard transactions or standard type of situations. It seems like everything right now is so nuanced and 10x the amount of intensity and time and energy required.
Agreed.
That's why we all need vacations coming up to the end of this year. Oh, let me tell you. Okay, Rube, so tell me about this. What surprised you most?
I would say, and you just touched on it earlier, Ralph, in kind of speaking in the divided market, and this is where I was going to go, and what surprised me most was just at the beginning of the year, it was just a completely different sentiment. I'll say the first quarter of the year. Sentiment was quite strong across the entire market, I found. And I think there were a lot of buyers out there who were wanting to take advantage of, one, lower prices, and two, get in before any subsequent rate cuts. And I won't say that part surprised me. I think that was very smart thinking. But what did surprise me, or at least I found it interesting, that once we had that first rate cut in June and that second rate cut in July, both average price and sales decreased month over month. And sure, I think seasonality played into that. But I think for the most part, buyers were just tired of will they or won't they? Are there going to be cuts? Is affordability going to be restored? And I think they just decided to take an earlier vacation and a longer vacation from the market. And then I think what actually surprised me is how long it took them to jump back in. I don't know about you guys or anybody else on the team or anybody else in the market, but this December has been nuts on my end, and much busier than I was expecting and much busier than any other December that I've taken part of.
And I will tell you, the U.S. elections has played far more into this than most people understand or acknowledge. In September, we were questioning whether there could be a civil war down south. And it was interesting because U.S. election cycles generally tend to have a big play on how the market behaves. In the U.S. specifically, sales go down, transactions go down like 20 to 30 to 40%, I believe, in an election year. And then the preceding year, they surge right back up and beyond. And I think we saw that play out. And there was a lot of uncertainty even after the election in the U.S. Would things sort of simmer down? And the tensions really did seem, at least from my perspective, to simmer down because it was a decisive election, regardless of what political outcome you were hoping for. It wasn't going to be tied up in lawyers. And I think people were just like, okay, we're back to a bit more of a stable environment. We have some understanding that things aren't going to blow up. Interest rates just came down another 100 basis points while we were waiting. Yeah. Maybe it's time. And so we are seeing a lot of activity, and I'm hearing from mortgage brokers that they're seeing a ton of pre-approvals coming down the pipeline in conjunction.
Good.
Exactly.
So question, in terms of the experiences over the last 12 months, has there been any key experience that will change the way that you conduct business in the future moving into 2025 and beyond? Like you're going to be like, this is a new practice after everything that happened and unfolded over the last 12 months.
Yeah, I'll say one interaction that has stuck with me from earlier this year. And it's really one moment in general. And I'll give kudos to, I won't name her, but I'll give kudos to a very well-known East End agent. And she does a ton of business, and we were working closely together on a deal and for a few days. And all of a sudden, my client had a life circumstance happen and an opportunity present itself to them. And after days and days of very cordially and hardworking collaboration, we had to say, thank you for all of this, but this just isn't in the cards for my client anymore. And sorry?
You had to rescind.
Yeah, we had to rescind. And she could have been pissed off. She could have been upset and frustrated. I'm sure she was frustrated. But I'll say what stuck with me and what I will carry into next year is the response that I got. And that response was, you know what, Reuben, my clients are going to be very disappointed. But if this is the worst thing that happens to us today, then I think we've had a pretty good day. And I think that we can get so bogged down in the nitty gritty of everything. And there's so much cynicism and emotions that are involved. I think if everybody carried themselves with a little bit more positivity and optimism, and didn't take everything so personally, I think that is what I will try and emulate going into next year.
I love that story. And I think it's so absolutely true. And she handled that with such class. And you will always remember her for that. And I think you probably will always have a relationship with her in a positive way because of it. And
100%.
I think so oftentimes, I mean, you never know when you're going to deal with people again, right? It could be 2 months, 6 years down the road. And so you never want to burn bridges, as they say. So I love that story and agree that it's so much easier sometimes to choose the more frustrated path than to see that we're just trading real estate. We're not saving lives here. It's not brain surgery.
And I think
Yeah.
too many agents watch, these shows like Selling Sunset, where they think that running around with a big ego and putting themselves above their clients and everyone else and everything else, like a situation you're dealing with at the moment with another agent, which is the exact opposite. But
Just being positive, though.
exactly.
Exactly. Staying positive.
But it's great seeing the examples of who you want to be and how you want to be, so you can contrast it with the ones that you don't. But, just always remembering that nobody's dying, not to take ourselves too seriously, and just to always do the best we can for our people, and everything will work itself out.
It always does. In the long run, it always does.
And, we're filming this early in the morning, and I just wanted to share this. I have a candle burning by my desk, so I feel very spiritual.
Is that a positivity candle for you, Ralph?
Yes.
Exactly.
You are known for your optimism and friendliness.
Friendliness, for sure.
Wow. Everyone's
Awesome.
like, look at that guy. He's just radiating love.
Peace and harmony. Well, I think that's such a great story. I think it's a great way to just end this conversation. Reuben, is there anything else you want to say about 2024?
No, I'm looking forward to seeing what 2025 has in store for us.
Amazing.
All right.
I love looking back at 2024 with you. Thanks for being here, Rubes. We'll catch you the next
Thanks
time
for
around.
having me.
Thanks, Rubes.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.
Okay, so today we have a special guest weighing in on 2024, the year that was. We have superstar, rock star, Fox Marin agent, Sammy Marasco. Fun fact about Sammy, she is so fun. She is the de facto Fox Marin social convener. So who better to talk about 2024 and the year that was, but none other than Sammy. Sammy, so great to have you.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thanks, Ralph.
Okay, so let's talk about 2024. We're at the end of it. Hard to believe, but true. So in one word, if you could describe the year of Toronto real estate in 2024, what one word would you use?
I would use tricky, Ralph. Tricky.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It was tricky.
It was very
a
tricky.
really tricky year. I think that's a really good word to describe it.
Yeah. At first, I thought about resilient, but I was like, no, it was tricky. It was really tricky.
Yeah.
Lots of challenges this year.
Oh, yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what everyone says when we ask the question. And I feel like tricky right now is leading the charge.
Mm-hmm.
You're a front runner, Sammy.
I'll take it.
I love it. So what surprised you the most about the year of 2024 in Toronto real estate?
Well, near the end, I was surprised by the speed and amount by which the Bank of Canada dropped rates, especially the last one. We talk about this in our weekly team meeting, Ralph, and the last occurrence of 2 consecutive 50-point reductions was during the financial crisis in 2008. So really shows that there's concern there. Otherwise, this probably wouldn't have happened. So yeah, that was kind of surprising, but in a good way, I guess. That'll really help with buyers, especially those who are on the fence majority of this year because of affordability issues.
Okay, so your biggest takeaway or learning in 2024?
This is a recurring theme that happens, I think, in trickier years, and this was a tricky year. Tough markets really set skilled and knowledgeable agents apart from those that aren't in the business full time. So it's so important now more than ever that we're staying up to date and that we're educating our clients, staying educated, and we're proactive in our approaches, because it's the only way that we can really service the client to the highest standard, which is what we're all about. And when we talk in our meetings about client successes, it's really obvious that this sets our buyers and sellers apart from those who don't have a skilled agent in their corner.
We always talk about this, but we have a big whiteboard in our kitchen area at the office here. And right on it, I wrote 2 years ago, as we set into the 2 most tricky years of Toronto real estate in 40 years. And right on that board, I wrote, strong markets make weak agents. And so it's in the weak markets where you really have strong agents. And it's definitely a pros market. And you can see that in the data of the number of agents leaving the business or the number that aren't even transacting anymore. So it really is a shift. But with any downturn, there's always great opportunity for those that work hard and really care about their craft.
Agreed.
And their clients, obviously.
Mhm.
I have a follow-up question to that. So when people talk about this, the standout between the knowledge broker and the everyday broker that's in the business part-time, or they just do a few transactions a year, Sammy, what do you feel, or how do you know that you are a knowledge broker? Like, what are the standout qualities that you personally feel that you possess that make you stand out from the average? And in a market like this, where it has been more challenging, where have you been like, it's nice to know that I have my shit together and these are the reasons I know why?
That's a good question. I think we see what happens right in front of us, but being able to make projections and anticipate what's going to come down the pipeline.
Hmm.
I think, Ralph bangs this into us about being knowledgeable and staying up to date with what's going on in the market in Toronto, but federally and nationally, like at a global scale. So having that in our pocket, knowing exactly what's going on and having an opinion about whether to go left or go right, and then guiding our clients in those directions, I think that really helps us stand out.
Yeah, I really feel like it has a lot to do with being able to be like, how would my client possibly be feeling now in this situation with all of these unknown variables? And how can I navigate that and get ahead of their problems and solve them in advance, or attempt to solve them in advance before they reach out to me stressed or crying or yelling or worried or disconcerted? And so it's like being able to try your best to have that bird's eye perspective and that advanced perspective, but you can only have that with experience. And I
Yeah.
think that snowballs over time, so you can start predicting and getting ahead of things before they actually unfold. And I think this year has been difficult because it has been difficult to just exactly know what's going to happen. And I would say, just to throw my own word into the hat, I would say it's been unpredictable, and it's been that unpredictability which has been made it so difficult to be able to give good advice, because sometimes you're just like, I actually don't know what's going to happen. Like, I actually don't know what's going to happen. So I do agree, this is the year where that all that tenure and experience and education and knowledge has just paid off tenfold for both the agents and their client partnerships as well. So can you tell us, speaking of client partnership, a really great success story that you had in 2024?
Yeah, a good win. I think it was, again, trying to stay ahead of the market. I was working with a couple who initially, based on their budget, they were looking at a detached home or a semi, so a freehold. And not only did they realize that a freehold would be a lot more work than a townhome or a condo, but also the competition was getting stiff. And they quickly realized they didn't want to deal with the stress of these bidding wars and the competition. So we were able to adapt quickly. We pivoted, we changed all their parameters, and we got them into a large condo that checked almost all of their boxes. And they were spared that heartbreak of multiple lost offers. And we had the upper hand to negotiate, which felt really good. So we got them a great deal on a 2-bedroom condo with a gorgeous lake view. And on top of that, they bought in, I think, end of May, early June, but didn't close until end of August. So they saw 2 rate drops in between when they first got pre-approved. So the good news just kept on coming for them. It was really great.
I love that win. And I love when clients are open-minded to pivoting once they see what's out there in the marketplace, and they're not just so rigid with their initial checklist, and they have the ability to be a bit more fluid and explore different asset classes. And I hate to say the word asset classes, because every time we say that, people in the comments always get so offended, like we're not saying home. So asset or home for those of you who feel that that's an offensive thing to say, and can be like, okay, like I don't really feel like my budget's going to get me where I want to be. So I'm okay to take a step down the property ladder, or change neighborhoods, or look at something different than I expected in anticipation of, and then be able to find something that actually crosses all the T's and dots the I's at the same time. So that sounds like a great win. And they're happy in their new condo.
Yes, very happy.
Condo living's so easy. There's so many benefits of it. It's like living in a hotel.
Definitely.
You never have to shovel your snow, and you never have to take the ice off your car. I just feel like
Yeah, but you have to pay maintenance fees, Corey,
oh yeah, forgot about that.
because there's so many houses you can buy that are maintenance
Oh
free.
yeah, it doesn't cost anything to live in a house.
No, not at all.
I love hearing that. Sammy, we're going to wrap this up with one question here. If you could go back in time to the start of 2024, knowing what you know today, what one piece of advice would you give your January 1st, 2024 self?
If this is pertaining to the market and us working within the market, I think it's ride with the ebbs and the flows, with the waves, because when it gets busy, it gets so busy. And we're so fortunate to have a very collaborative team and an amazing client base and referrals so that opportunities are ever present. And I hate to say no to people, but you really do. When the going's good, you've got to put your head down and work your butt off. And when it's chill, don't panic, just relax, even though there weren't many chill moments this year.
It's usually like when it's chill, you got to put your head down and work even harder.
You have to keep going. You need to keep up with people, conversing with your clients, with your sphere, with whomever, and make sure you're understanding where they're at. So then you can continue to stay a few steps ahead. And when you hear that headline or you hear that read that news article that will pertain to them, you can say, hey, I saw this. I was thinking of you. This is going to affect you. Let's talk about it. So that's really important. Always be on your toes.
Awesome. I love it.
Being chill stresses me out.
Always be closing and always be on your toes.
And I always like to say, for Ralph specifically, always be charging, because God, this guy can't keep track of his chargers.
Well, we don't need to give window into our domestic life, Corey.
I like to add that.
That's for another podcast.
You always be closing on and always be charging. Thank you for your great input. 2024 was a great year. It was tricky for sure. And we're looking forward to our next podcast with you, where you can hear your 2025 predictions.
Woohoo. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you.
What an honor it is to have Ian Busher, VP Sales at Fox Marin, here to join us to talk about all things 2024, the year that was. Ian, so great to have you here.
Nice to be back, Ralph. Good to see your smiling face.
Feelings mutual, Ian. Corey's laughing.
I don't know, just the fact that anyone references Ralph as having a smiling face just cracks me up right there.
Yeah, resting bitch face, right?
Well,
bitch face.
But look what happened. I did it, and it happened.
My God.
Miracles do happen.
Hilarious.
Okay, well, let's talk 2024. Ian, I'm going to lead off here.
Yep.
In one word, how would you describe the real estate market that was in 2024?
Challenged.
I like it.
Can you elaborate on that? Not that I disagree, but
I thought it was one word.
Me too.
I know. But like what? Why? How would you?
I think it was challenging for everybody, and that's why I picked that word. Is it was not one side or the other struggling. It was everybody. It was sellers. It was buyers. It was agents. It was developers. Everybody struggled this year with just trying to figure out where things were going, how to get a step ahead of anything, how to keep things moving, and every single thing seemed to be 10 times heavier than it has been in previous years.
Well, you nailed that one.
Totally. And I feel like it was just a sentiment all around, even beyond real estate as well. Mm-hmm. I don't know anyone who was like, 2024 was amazing, best year of my life. I feel like most people are like, oh my God.
I think we really started to feel what only just started in 22 that continued in 23. I think 24, at least for me personally, but I think for a lot of people I've been talking to, has been the worst of the last 3 years. So here's to a 2025 turnaround.
So with 2024 being a challenged year, what was your biggest takeaway or your biggest learning that you're going to drive into 2025?
Great question. Thank you. In looking for something to take away, as you say, I would call it a silver lining. What was the silver lining with all the great clouds that 2024 gave us? I would say that I will come out of this year with the abilities and experiences to say that I've continued to survive and thrive in all kinds of conditions rather than simply hot or even mediocre markets. I am and will be well-rounded for all types of conditions moving forward, and weak markets make strong agents. So if I'm in this game for another 10, 15, 20 years, I've seen crazy strong markets. I've seen, as I said, mediocre. And now I've seen this and I've come through it. So I feel like some of the things that were very hard to do at the beginning of this really challenged market have become easier, and repetition has created sort of a formula for dealing with these trying times.
Yeah, you're a better agent now because of it.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that's my biggest learning, my biggest takeaway is how to deal with these kinds of conditions and recognize them going forward and be prepared for them.
I totally agree. And Ralph and I have talked about this a lot. I think we had this with one of our former teammates as well earlier in the pod, is just that having the hard conversations don't feel as hard anymore. And the takeaway, at least for me, is that just being 100% honest and transparent has never paid off more. Not that I haven't been before, but like just being like, this sucks. This is hard. Let's try to find a way to problem solve or mastermind through this or brainstorm. I'm going to toss this out there. This might seem like a crazy idea, whatever it is, really listening, all of those things that I don't think, 8 years ago, I would have had the balls to be so forthright. And now there is absolutely no payoff in being any other way.
Yep. Yeah, it's made us all better agents.
And
those of us who have gotten through it.
Such a strong learning to, it is what it is. Like, we're going through this right now. I can't sugarcoat it. Your listing is struggling, or we're unable to find you a property that works within your budget or meets your expectations because buyers and sellers aren't connecting and there's not a lot of quality. I mean, there's just so many instances where it's just like, you know what? I have no emotional concern about expressing the situation because there's so much happening in the world that is so far beyond all of our control. Here's the facts. Here's the information. It is what it is. And let's partner together and collaborate to figure out what to do now. And you just get kicked in the head by the market and the economy so many times where it's just, you lose that emotional attachment to trying to fix things that you can't fix or have control over. You just try and work your way through them. And I think that is the best way to get through these type of economies and markets, when collaborating with clients to get the best possible outcome. Because sugarcoating anything in an environment like this, it's only going to hurt your client's perception of the situation when they just need the facts and the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to be a ring bearer for what's really going on and what's likely to happen.
Yeah. You want to sell your property in Toronto? It's not going to be sexy.
Yeah,
That should be our line for this year.
It's a dirty time.
That should have been our tagline all year round.
So going along that theme, Ian, what would you say surprised you the most in 2024?
I know we're going to talk about predictions shortly, but my predictions for this year largely fell short. I feel like the lack of a rebound at any point in this year was what shocked me the most. I really thought that a couple of different factors were going to turn things around. We were going to start to see an increase in buyers coming back to the table. We were going to start to see bidding wars coming back for our sellers. And the market stayed relatively the same. It has tenacity. It's going. But the lack of any real rebound for any season or any reason, I think, was the biggest surprise for me.
We had 3 or 4 properties that struggled in November, December, and then everything sold in January.
Yeah. So that was the start to the year. So that was a false start. That was something that led us all to believe, oh, maybe there's a turnaround coming. Then it was the spring market and interest rate decreases. Then, okay, let's all take a breather. It's the summertime. Fall market, that's what it's going to be. That wasn't it. 50 BPS rate reductions, that's not doing it. All of these things where you thought, well, maybe that, and still nothing. And here we are, days away from the end of the year, and all sort of like throwing our hands in the air to say, I hope so, but it's really, really stuck and unpredictable and challenged.
And I don't want to get too political here, but I just think Canada overall is just in a bit of a schlumpy mood right now.
Yeah.
So we just need a revised spirit and some new energy that will really help. I just think the sentiment across the board is just very negative. And I'm looking forward to some change in that direction.
Yeah.
Well, on the same page. And do you feel that if you could go back and talk to yourself at the beginning of the year, that you would give yourself a piece of advice that maybe you might not have predicted if you could go back to your January 1st, 2024 self and been like, Busher, this is what you need to know. Here's some advice.
Yeah.
Don't crush it. What would
Don't get ahead of yourself, kid. It's going to be bad. but it'll end. And
Yeah.
here we are. And here we are. I mean, there's a lot of things that could have been much, much worse, for sure. But it's definitely, I very rarely at the end of a year say, see you later, 2023. Don't let the door hit you on the ass on the way out. But certainly this year, I'm looking forward to hopefully some positive spins to 2025. The way out is through, and we're almost done with 2024.
Like, I think all things considered, we had a good year, and our clients all got the results that they needed to, but everything was 10x. In some ways, unnecessarily so, because the malaise was caused, looking in hindsight, by just tremendous amount of uncertainties.
Mm-hmm.
Is a nuclear bomb going to go off in Europe? Is one going to go off in the Middle East? Is there going to be a civil war in the United States? Like, these are very big considerations in conjunction with making one of the largest financial or life decisions, which would obviously cause you to put a pause on something. So I think the mood in the country, a lot of negative economic indicators continue to come out, tremendous political uncertainty here. And you just add all of this up and put this into a bit of a stew, and it definitely feels like there's been a bit of a malaise. And it would really be nice to see some of these issues wrap up at some point in time, so that people can just get on with their lives and feel confident in making the best decisions for themselves, as opposed to just suffering from this analysis paralysis.
Yeah. Being afraid of making the wrong choice, potentially. Yeah.
But that's a choice in and of itself as well. Okay, Ian, and what would you say your biggest client win of 2024 was? Did you have a moment where...
Let's talk about some wins.
Sure.
Yeah.
I had a bunch of great moments with a bunch of great clients. I had a great bully offer for some clients we had for many months that was successful. That was a nice win. That was in May. I had some clients that just kind of fell in my lap after firing their other agent, and that was a nice win as well. But I think my favorite one was buying a condo off market for somebody super appreciative, super receptive. And the story of it, the Coles Notes version, the short version, is that basically we went to see a condo. Somebody scooped it up really quickly. It went into suddenly, all of a sudden, a condo was in this crazy bidding war. And it got to a point where my client was like, let's take a step back for a second. This is insane. Like, what is going on? So I started looking up past listings in the building and discovered that somebody had just taken something down off the market. And they likely didn't know what was going on with an identical unit right now with this bidding war. So I reached out to that agent and said, is there any possible way we can see this tomorrow morning? And we did. And we got in there and we scooped it. And then the story came out that the other one had a bidding war and sold for a lot more than the one that we managed to scoop.
Such a big win.
Yeah. And the client was ecstatic and told everybody that she knew. She has since sent me another client, and it just was sort of, for this year, with all of the muck, you really needed to think outside the box and also sometimes take a step back and say, what else can we do here? And get creative. So that was a big win because of the fact, despite all the other big wins, that one was one where it was sort of like, it wasn't just a win for a win's sake. It actually was the process and the creative way by which I found a tremendous opportunity for my client.
And the hustle.
Yes.
Because that's what it takes. And by the way, I do think muck could be a strong contender for 2024, not just real estate related. I'm just talking about the year. Like just 2024, the year that was muck.
Yeah.
I think
just
it has potential.
Your horse is given up and you have to get out of the wagon and pull that wagon through the muck for 12 months. That's what 2024
If you're watching this, please comment. Do you like the word muck as a descriptor for your 2024?
Yeah, it was not a brat summer. It was a muck summer.
And Ian, I do agree. Like, it's those moments and those wins that are like, oh my gosh, this is why I'm going through the muck and this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I know you're telling me there's some clients you're working with. They're early in the process, but just so wonderful to talk to and communicate with, that it just those are the people and the moments. They don't even have to be a transaction happening, but that makes it all worthwhile.
Absolutely.
To push through the muck.
Yep. the market and the process is tough enough without all of us being clients and agents all being really hard on each other as well. I know it's tough and emotional and everything else, but if in the spirit of cooperation, it's made so much easier when we're all working our way through the muck as a team instead of fighting each other at the same time that we're trying to get through the muck.
And there you have it.
I love it.
Ian, thank you so much for joining us this week. And
My
we
pleasure.
look forward to seeing you next week to hear about your 2025 predictions.
And
Thanks for having me, guys.
And the 2024 podcast is kind of like a little mini therapy session.
Yes. Thank
Get
you
it
for
off your
tuning in.
chest.
Yeah.
Get out of here, 2024. Get
Exactly.
out of here.
Exactly. All right. We'll talk 2025 soon.
Happy holidays, guys.
Bye.
Okay, so this conversation, much anticipated, we have none other than Jerome Werniuk, who is a rock star agent at Fox Marin, and he is here to talk about all things 2024, the year that was. Jerome, so great to have you here.
Jerome.
Thanks for having me.
AKA Jeromeo.
When did that start?
I think I heard someone on our team, I think it was Emma, who coined that, but I'm sure you've heard that before, Jerome.
Yes, I've had many nicknames. That is definitely up there.
I love it.
Kind of works. Anyways, I don't know why it came. I don't know if I've ever called you that, but came to mind in this framework. Anyways, Jerome, we're glad to have you here. So let's talk about 2024. Let's just kick this right off. In one word, how would you describe the Toronto real estate market in 2024?
I would call it leisurely.
Leisurely.
Yes.
Really?
Interesting.
Leisurely.
Slow's a little too obvious. Leisurely, I worked with a lot of buyers this year, and compared to the environment we're in 22 and a lot of 23, where we're sort of under 2 months of inventory, there's a lot of properties that were not listed with bid dates. There was a lot more time for buyers to think about what they wanted to do, to take their time. And so there's a very leisurely pace to buying real estate in Toronto this year. Don't know if I could say the same on the sales side. That was a lot more pivoting and adapting and changing strategy 4 times. But on the buy side, it was a very leisurely year.
Okay.
Would you call it a walk in the park? A leisurely
I
walk in
would
the park?
not. There is a leisurely walk in Toronto real estate is manic chaos in pretty much every other market in North America. So I don't know if I'd go so far as to say a walk in the park, but it was a leisurely pace down, we'll call it King Street here.
Yeah, like leisurely sounds like easy to me. Casual.
Enjoyable.
Like
Fun.
a coffee in your hand, window shopping.
I'm a glass half full type of guy. So maybe you would frame it a different way in terms of what happened in the market, but there's not a lot of moments, particularly for first time home buyers that are trying to get into the market where they are not competing with 12 offers on a $1.2 million semi. And so if you're competing with 3 offers on a bid night, that's almost as good as it gets. And that's where we were for a good chunk of the year.
Well, I'd like to tell you that your word is different than the rest of the team's word. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, if that is alone what you set out to do, you certainly accomplished
Yeah.
it. But at the very least, but definitely an interesting take, because I find that everyone has been rather stressed trying to make the right decision in a very uncertain time. But awesome. Thank you for sharing that word and bringing your perspective to the table, which is always super, super valued. So awesome.
So, Jerome, what surprised you the most out of this leisurely year in Toronto real estate?
Yeah, I remember doing this video last year, and I actually went back and watched all of my predictions and everything I was going to say for this upcoming year in preparation. And I remember how gung-ho I was on the fact that interest rates were going to be cut probably as early as late Q1 of 2024. And I was, my messaging to a lot of clients was that it's going to be competitive at some point. We don't know when. It might start in January, it might start in February. It's definitely going to be starting by like Q2, definitely by Q3. And we didn't really see average prices go up as much as I had thought they were going to. I think that's, part and parcel because interest rate cuts didn't really happen until halfway through the year, which surprised a lot of the real estate agent community. And even though there was significant demand out of the gates in January, February, it was pretty flat. Like it was just kind of calm waters all the way through, I think, sort of May until October, November, when things started to pick up again after rates really started to get cut. So that was the biggest surprise of the year. There was kind of times where there was a lot of demand and things were moving really quickly, but the majority of the year was way slower, or should I say leisurely, than I had predicted.
Well, it's interesting because, what you were advising your clients was very much aligned with the consensus. So, I mean, everybody thought that we would start seeing rates coming down a lot sooner than they actually started to. And then a lot of people thought that the initial rate would be a signal that the cycle was over and that we would be trending downwards and that all these buyers were going to rush in. And in June, we just saw more sellers coming to the market rather than buyers. So definitely a lot of people were surprised, but yet those cuts that we anticipated and the veracity that we were anticipating, it did come. It just came a whole lot later than a lot of people were expecting or anticipating.
Great.
Awesome. So what would you say, based on everything, now us being at the end of 2024, what would your biggest takeaways be looking back on the year that is almost over at this point?
Yeah, I mean, this is my third full year in residential real estate, and kind of every year you add building blocks of how to do a better and better job and where you're getting information from, how you're trying to make predictions and advise your clients. And you mentioned a word in the last answer there, but around consensus. And I used to really heavily focus on, economic immigration data to try and advise clients on where I thought the market was heading. If the overnight rate goes up, there's going to be less buyer demand. If we see tons of immigration coming into the country, there's going to be an increase in buyer demand. This year, I think one of the biggest learnings I had is how much real estate agent sentiment can shift the market. And like we were talking about at the end of 2023, pretty much every agent I spoke to, everybody I was following their blogs and sort of pundits on the market were predicting that interest rates were going to get cut earlier in the year. And then as soon as that first cut happened, we're going to see all this pent up demand that was sitting on the sidelines in 2023 pour in. And I guess a lot of consumers listened to the real estate agents because right away, right out of the gates, as I said, there was a ton of demand at the beginning of 2024. And, none of the macro numbers had really changed. Inflation data was pretty much static. Bank of Canada hadn't really indicated that they were going to cut rates imminently, at least with the language that was coming out from the interest rate announcements. And we saw a pretty atypical run up in those first 2 months where there was just over 1 month of inventory by the end of the February. So that to me indicates that when everybody in the real estate agent community is saying the same thing, that's actually going to push consumer sentiment to see that thing come to fruition. And I hadn't really factored that in as being something that could move the market prior to this year. But the beginning of 2024 was just it was a perfect example of that. And, understanding what's happening with macro trends, obviously that's important. What I'm seeing on the street level, day to day, number of offers, how that's shaking out is important. But I'm now really starting to use this sort of third tool is what are all the agents saying? When I'm on the phone with people, are they saying the same things I'm thinking? Is everybody saying the same thing? Because if that's true, they're probably advising their seller clients the same way or their buyer clients. And if you understand what the herd is planning on doing, you can adjust your plan accordingly and get the best outcome for yourself.
What was interesting was at the beginning, that time frame, all the banks were projecting rate decreases. And I think a lot of the agents who actually do have a voice, which I think in my opinion is rather small, they were relying on the information from the pundits, from the Benjamin Tals of the world, and from all of the statements that were coming out. And the banks were all wrong in terms of the projections as how they saw rates coming. And I think that information was what a lot of the real estate agents were relying on. And it's just been such an interesting time, to my perspective, in the market, whereby interest rates have played such a role. Like, I can never remember sitting by my phone waiting for an announcement from the Bank of Canada with bated breath. Like, that just never happened before. Up until 2 years ago, the last 15 years of the Toronto real estate market, it wasn't even a blip. It might come up in conversation, oh, this happened. But it's just such an extreme environment where you see these type of things going on that it's not normally how I've seen the market operate. But it has been extreme, and the consensus view definitely has played a role in shaping how the market rolls. But at the same time, so many things keep happening, which is different from what the consensus is saying, which has made things so unpredictable.
Yes. So I guess we could all agree that no matter where we look, nobody knows, and it's our best guess.
On the short term, yes. But I still think that there are patterns that are going to play out long term that are not 100%, but I think a lot of us could agree with certainty that will occur over some point in time.
And there's been a lot of real estate pundits talking about how the market is just going to crash and burn. Like, if you go on to YouTube or some of the mainstream podcasts out there or about the Canadian economy, like, it's super negative. I do feel like it's very helpful that we brainstorm within the team, because that sort of boots on the ground perspective is the way for us to get the inside track as to how to manage things in the very short term. Like, I'm talking short term being in the next 2, 3, 4 weeks. Like, is this a good time to list? Why? And like, the buyer specialists on the team are like, because I'm starting to see an uptake in showings, or there's lots of people at open houses, or I had a listing last week and it had 40 showings in 3 days and it's at this price point. Like, you need to have those intimate conversations with people who are like working on the street level to really be able to make somewhat of an informative decision and be able to advise your clients accordingly, because nobody seems to know what is going to be happening in the next 3, 4, 6 months, whether they're a mainstream economist or a writer for the Toronto Star or a, big YouTuber. It seems like everyone's off the mark.
I will never forget that chart in the end of 2021, where it had all the big 5 banks projections on where interest rates were going to go, and they were like 25 basis points, 50 basis points. And then we went on the biggest run-up of interest rates ever, or at least in modern history, and all the banks missed it.
Yeah, and to your point, Corey, like, the macro is important to be aware of, but if somebody's looking to buy a house in Roncy and they have a 1.7 budget, like, all that really matters on a short-term basis is tracking every single listing that comes out in a week. It's 12 properties or 15 properties. And you see the number of offers that are popping up, and you're running into the same agents, the same buyers at every single listing and open house. And you can really wrap your head around what's happening in that micro market segment. And that's by far the best information you're going to have going in and trying to have a bid strategy, right?
Yeah. 100% it is.
Well, what a great way to wrap up this conversation and put 2024 in a nutshell and then put a bow on it. Thank you, Jerome, so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Jerome.
Okay.
Happy holidays.